It's Friday, so let's get to some questions from the listeners.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned in to another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. And you can listen to us on wherever you download your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. For you first-time listeners wondering what to expect from this channel, we bring you episodes Monday through Friday, 30-minute episodes in length. And, of course, on these Fridays and every Friday, whether it's the off-season or the regular season, we dedicate the episode to you, the listener. Any question you may have, you can reach out to me on YouTube or Twitter. Just title your comment Mailbag Friday and then put your question, so it's very easy for me to find it because I do these on the fly. I don't look at these questions before we do the episode. Before we get started, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. And one last reminder, I know I keep saying one more thing and this and that, but if I do miss your question, just follow up by commenting on this video, and I'll try to have it answered before Monday morning. So I'll try to get back to him on Sunday night. As I said earlier in the week, I've been having to pre-record some of these episodes. So if I don't cover some breaking news, it's because I'm out of town and I wasn't able to get to it. But did want to get all 5 episodes in. Let's get to question number 1 from Bryce. Which scenario do you think is more likely? Both India and Massey stay in platoon at second base. KC pursues a free agent second baseman and looks to trade India or Massey. Or KC trades for someone to play second base. Bohm is a name I find intriguing. I would say the likeliest scenario would be number 2 there. I could see them trying to bring back Adam Frazier, as I've expressed before, and then the Royals would be looking to trade one of those other guys. I could see them non-tendering Jonathan India. Maybe Michael Massey has some value for a team looking for a second baseman that is great defensively and is still young and has controllable years. So I would say of those options, number 2 feels like the most likely, but I also won't rule out a scenario in which Jonathan India and Michael Massey platoon there next season. Number 3, I just don't see being likely at all where they would trade for a second baseman. It would be pretty easy to find one on the open market. This one is coming from A and B. Who are you projecting to be our left fielder next season? Could Jack learn to play left field at his young age, or is it somehow a fundamentally different position than right field? Absolutely different than right field. Different reads you have to have, different angles that you have to read. So those things are maybe why I wouldn't try to change up where Jack Caglianone's playing. He's already a first baseman playing right field. Not sure I want him to learn a completely different position where everything is almost backwards. So I would say it's going to be their big acquisition, whether that be free agency or that be the trade route, though I would believe it to be more on the trade route. That's who I think will be their opening day left fielder. If it's not, I would expect someone like Mike Yastrzemski to be that guy in a platoon scenario. But I do believe it to be an acquisition of some form, whether that be free agency or that be trade. Next one is coming from Braden. With this Salvi extension, could the Royals deal from their catching prospect line this offseason? With Perez and Jensen combining there, Jim Bowden specifically wrote that Tampa Bay could be looking to KC for a catcher trade. He mentioned Texas is another one looking for a catcher too. Keep up the great work as always. And thanks for the kind words as always. Absolutely can be an offseason where the Royals look to trade one of those catchers. Salvador Perez is going to be here for the next 2 years. Carter Jensen will be a multi-year pro at that point. And Blake Mitchell is still somebody you're high on, but, you know, are you going to have Carter Jensen and Blake Mitchell on the same team? I just don't see it being that likely because one of those guys is going to be the everyday catcher. And I'm just tired of moving guys around to make it work. I want guys that play a certain position to stay at that position, which is why I believe it's more likely the Royals could try to move Blake Mitchell or Ramon Ramirez in a bigger trade this offseason. This one's coming from Matt. Love the show and appreciate you doing this for us, fellow Royal junkies. Of course, if Bobby returns to 2024 form, we stay healthy and we get a bat or two this offseason, we should be right back in the thick of things in the American League and especially in the Central. Do you agree, or am I being the homer now? Yeah, I did call myself a homer a couple episodes ago, and I'll stand by it. I know for that segment, I absolutely came across as a homer. I don't believe that you are being a complete homer. What I would say is those bats are going to have to be pretty significant for this team to be a favorite in the American League Central, because I expect Detroit to be aggressive this offseason as well. Cleveland has always been a thorn in the side, and they're coming off of winning this division yet again. So I would say that those bats will have to be massive, game-changing type bats for them to be American League Central favorites. Now, other parts to this have to contribute as well. Jack Caglione and Carter Jensen have to be league average bats for this to happen. Bobby Witt Jr. returning to form, that goes a long way because him doing that in 2024 pretty much led them, along with the pitching staff, to an 86-win season. So if you get that and you have two significant bats and your two top prospects perform at a league average rate, then we can start talking about this team being a favorite in the American League Central. This one's coming from Jet. Of the 4A guys, MJ Melendez, Drew Waters, Nick Lofton, John Rave, Tyler Tolbert, and Michael Massey, if you consider him to be one, who do we have the most hope in and that they might become a constant in the lineup? I'll probably take Michael Massey out of this conversation because I don't believe him to be a 4A player. He's a big leaguer. He's just not there yet as a big leaguer. When I look at 4A guys, I'm talking about the ones that are constantly heading back and forth between Kansas City and Omaha. And of that bunch, I'd probably say that I'm out on MJ at this point. I'm out on Drew Waters. I'm out on Nick Lofton. Tolbert and Rave don't really excite me, but I'd probably take John Rave in that scenario over the rest. I'm not sure that Tyler Tolbert will ever be that much of a hitter. We've seen enough from Drew Waters and MJ Melendez. So that just leaves me John Rave. And I thought there were moments and spurts in the second half, but he is more of an age prospect. Good thing is he's quick and he can play all three outfield spots. That should have some value going into next season. Looks like that will do it on our YouTube section. If I missed anybody's or it got buried in the comments, like I said, just reach out below on this YouTube video and I'll try to answer it before Monday morning. Let's jump over to Twitter here. This one's from Jeff. If Perez stays healthy over the next 2 years, how many career home runs does he finish with? Is 400 too much to expect given his age? I would say that's far too much to expect in a 2-year stretch. That would be putting together back-to-back 50 home run seasons or close to it. I would say that he's got a good chance of reaching 340. I'm going to count on Salvi for back-to-back 20 home run seasons. I feel that's putting the bar really low, but not overshooting it a little bit. I feel that 20 home run season, anywhere from 20 to 25, that put him in that 340 to 350 range. So that's where I believe it's going to settle. I don't believe he'll get that close to 400 when it's all said and done. This one's from RB Carr. Brendan Donovan or Duran a better trade fit? And how about signing Yaz and Lane Thomas as a platoon if you can't find that middle of the order bat? For the first part, I believe I'd take Brendan Donovan. I believe he's a better top of the order bat and wouldn't cost as much. I know Jarren Duran just signed a 1-year deal with Boston. I'm not sure that will change up a lot of what they're going to do this offseason, but I really like Brendan Donovan, and I feel he'd be a nice fit at the top of the order. I do want to credit David Lesky for actually bringing up that platoon idea because I read his Inside the Crown anytime it shows up in my inbox, and he had a platoon situation with Mikey Stremski and Lane Thomas. I love that for outfield depth. I don't want that to be the answer for the middle of the order because both those guys just simply wouldn't be. But to have them as outfield depth, I'd be all for it because I believe it'd cost you around 10 to 15 million on 1-year deals for both of them. So I'd say Yaz goes in around 7 to 8 million, and I would say that Lane Thomas is around 5 million because he barely played at all last season. It wasn't very good when he was out there on the field for Cleveland. This one's coming from Ronnie. What is the plan with Vinny, Salvi, Carter, and Jack? Do the Royals really plan on playing Jack in right field often next season, or will someone be dealt to make this easier? I think they view him as a right fielder while Vinny's on this team, which that's going to be for a long time. Having a full off season where you're learning the outfield can change everything. I thought he looked smooth from time to time. He's got an electric arm, But I remember when MJ Melendez had an entire season to work in the outfield, it was night and day difference in how he handled left field. With Jack, he's athletic enough. He's got the arm to be a very nice right fielder, but he's got to win a job in spring training. JJ Picollo was very adamant about he's got to go into spring training and win a job. He's not being handed the job based on what he did last season. So you don't need to mix and match everybody. Vinny's their first baseman. Jack's going to be their right fielder. Carter and Salvi will be behind the plate. And I would say that Salvador Perez will DH a lot this season as long as Carter Jensen's bat continues to improve. We'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, still plenty of questions to get to next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can listen to us on wherever you download your podcasts. Want to tell you about PrizePicks. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play that first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after you play that first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it is good to be right. The next round of questions is going to begin with spoons. With Jack going to the WBC, do you maybe see a slow start for him? When Singer, MJ, and Bobby Witt Jr. did the WBC as young stars, they hardly played and had slow starts is why I ask. Yeah, absolutely a fair question. I remember we touched on this a little bit earlier in our episode, or segment, I should say, going over Jack Caglione and young guys playing in the WBC. The good news is for Jack is that Team Italy's not as good as the rest of the pool. So I would say that he's going to be a starter on that team. I'm not sure they have an abundance of talent where he would find himself on the bench in the majority of these games. Bobby was a 22, 23-year-old on Team USA where Trey Turner and Mookie Betts were in the infield. Tim Anderson as well when he was still in peak form. Vinny, I believe, had a good amount of run playing for Team Italy in his first go-around. MJ was on Team Puerto Rico, plenty of talent there. And then Brady Singer was out of the bullpen for Team USA. So they were on loaded teams, whereas Jack, I think Jack and Vinny will be able to be 2 of the top players on Team Italy. So that part is good for him. He's going to get the reps in great environments against great pitching. But still, there's a chance that it stunts his development. I'm sure the Royals would have had those discussions with him before he accepted the WBC. But in hearing JJ Picollo in the past, he's never been one to say you're not going there because it's going to stunt your development. This is an honor for these guys, and I believe it goes a long way with your players when you give them that free will. If they're invited to play for a country they want to represent, then you need to let them go and do it. So I'm excited to see him play, and this could be maybe a quick breakout for him before the season starts because let's all be honest, him going and tearing up spring training and looking really good ain't going to do much for you. But if he goes and tears it up in the WBC where everybody's trying from inning 1 on, it can maybe boost you into the regular season. But unlike those other guys, I do believe that Caglione will be starting for Team Italy pretty much in every single game. This one's coming from Chris. What does the loss of Zach Bove mean long-term for the organization? Well, first and foremost, I didn't have the chance in a couple of my other episodes to talk about the new assistant hitting coach. We'll be covering that next week. It's because we had to pre-record some of these episodes. So I do apologize on that. We did talk about Zach Bove, and it is a loss for the Royals organization, but you're hoping that the connections that Brian Sweeney has, Mitch Stetter, Paul Hoover, Matt Quatraro, they're going to be able to bring in a bright mind that can help Brian Sweeney as much as Zach Bove did. I have nothing but respect and joy for him to get that opportunity in Chicago. But I would say long-term, it's not going to be as noticeable, as great of a coach as he was, because I feel that top to bottom, the Royals coaching staff, when it comes to their pitchers, are pretty much in sync with each other. So who they bring in, they're going to continue to do the role that Zach Bove had and maybe give some different input here and there. But I would say for the most part, you shouldn't expect that much of a change because I know that Brian Sweeney is the head guy there and a very bright individual that, I feel that if whoever the coach is going to be, they're going to go along with what Brian Sweeney has to say in working with a lot of these pitchers. This one's coming from Bryce. Percentage of Gleyber Torres being a target for KC this offseason if India isn't brought back. I would say around 10 to 15%. I feel it is far likelier they go for a cheaper option there or go with Massey or just keep India. But to your question, if India isn't going to be returning, Gleyber Torres is going to be looking for probably a 4-year deal, a 3 to 4 year deal worth anywhere from 15 to 20 million. And that might be too expensive for a second baseman that, yes, was coming off a year where he was an all-star. He had great numbers for Detroit, but is that something you want to put on your payroll? I feel the Royals are very satisfied with what they could get from Adam Frazier. If they believe Jonathan India can bounce back, there are options out there. But I would say Gleyber Torres is going to be one of the more expensive infielders. If it were my pick, I'd probably lean toward a Jorge Polanco type deal based on what he did for Seattle over Gleyber Torres. As of right now, though, without much knowledge on if they are interested in Gleyber Torres, I would put it around 10 to 15%. This one's coming from Jason. Are there any players you haven't interviewed that you are especially interested in interviewing in spring training? That is an excellent question, and I'm hoping by the time I get down there, I will have some great questions for guys that I've been dying to interview. I would say having a one-on-one sit down with Vinny. I've interviewed Vinny before, but when you get down there, you get to sit in front of him. You're at a table. It's quiet. There's no other distractions. Vinny Pasquantino is great because I believe he's just awesome on the mic, and he's destined to have a podcast of his own at any point, whether he's still playing or if it's an off-season podcast. I remember that he'd said he was starting one up with Brent Rooker, but then that fell through. So I would love to see him, be on the mic and have a podcast of his own. But he's somebody I would like to have a sit-down one-on-one with. We're still trying to get a couple guys for this offseason as long as their schedules aren't too busy. I would say another one that would be great to interview. I have yet to interview Jack Caglione, so that would be another one there. Have interviewed Carter Jensen. I would maybe say, it's tough because a lot of these guys I have interviewed multiple times, and some of the ones that I haven't have been prospects or guys that don't play as much. I'll throw out one if he is brought back to Kansas City. I'll say Mike Yastrzemski. Which I'm putting my neck out there that I believe he'll be coming back and playing in a Royals uniform. I'll put him on that list there. And so if he's there at spring training, no doubt I will try to meet with Royals PR and make sure that happens. So I'll throw his name out there for now. If he's not, I'll say Tyler Tolbert. I feel Tyler Tolbert had a really cool story last year, and he earned that spot, and I'm sure they'd have a really good chance of making the team out of camp when they leave in late March. This one's coming from Brian. Junior got off to a slow start the last time he played in the WBC. Thoughts on it this time around? Kind of with my same answer for Jack Caglione. He wasn't a regular. He was basically used as a pinch runner in all of those games. He's going to be the starting shortstop for Team USA, Mark DeRosa. DeRosa's been raving about him. He said he was one of the more talented guys, even when he was on the team back in, I guess, what would that have been, 2023. So I can't wait to see him at shortstop. I believe he's going to be one of the stars of that team, and I'm not too worried about it. He's settled into being a star in this league, so I'm not concerned about him having a slow start in April. If he does, that he can always go on a hot streak that bumps his average about 100 to 150 points because they're so early on in the season. This one's from the Salvador Perez Enjoyer. Is Harrison Bader a good fit for the Royals? Just declined his player option with the Phillies. I do believe he's a good fit. The holdup would be that Harrison Bader's going to want a everyday contract. I should probably walk that back. He wants to be an everyday player, therefore want an everyday player contract. That's what I'm trying to get at here. And do the Royals want to give him that? It's risky because he's coming off of a great year, but he was not great in the previous years before that. He would give you as good of defense that Kyle Isbell does. He's a better bat than Kyle Isbell, but I could see him trying to get that 3-year deal or that 4-year deal that teams aren't really willing to give him. Now, later on in the offseason, if it gets to a scenario where you're not as confident in Kyle Isbell anymore and Harrison Bader's willing to take a 2-year deal, I might be all over that depending on what the price would be. You get it anywhere from 10 to 12 million. That to me would be worth it to have the same amount of defense in center field, but a little bit of an upgrade offensively. So yeah, I would say that he is a fit, and if the Royals are linked to him, it won't surprise me in the slightest. Let's get to one more before our final break. It's coming from Aiden. Thoughts on the supposed new hitting coach, Connor Dawson from the Brewers, and how much effect can he have on this offense? I'm glad I got this question because I know in a couple of the pre-recorded episodes, it was after it had already been announced, but I had already recorded the episodes. So to give my 2 cents here, young voice for a young hitting staff, or young players, I should say. And I like the fit a lot. It's a local guy, which is probably why you were able to entice him to come back to Kansas City for the same role he had in Milwaukee. The Brewers the last 2 years, top 5 in OBP. And it's good to get coaches from the Brewers because they can resemble the Royals in a lot of ways. They don't overspend on a bunch of people. They have some star players. They are built on pitching. But offensively, you want to raise the floor. Have a lot of those guys. And you go look at the Brewers offense and the guys that produced. Not all of them are the big names like Jackson Chourio and Christian Yelich, right? They got a lot out of their guys that were in the bottom of their order, and they were the number 1 seed in the National League. So I love the young voice and analytical voice to have some maybe different thoughts to bring to Alex Zumwalt, and he's got local ties there. I love the pickup. I'm not just saying that because it's fresh and it's new. I believe it's a really good fit for the Royals, and he's coming from 2 organizations in the Mariners and the Brewers that did a lot with smaller payrolls out there, and that best resembles the Royals. It's why when they hired Matt Quatrero and Paul Hoover, I like they were coming from Tampa, who resembles the Royals in a lot of ways. You go bring somebody from the Yankees or the Dodgers, not saying they're bad coaches, but they're dealing with top-end talent and expensive talent, which the Royals just simply don't have on their roster. Let's take our final break of the show. When we come back, we'll wrap it up with our final set of questions next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can catch me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. Want to tell you about our final sponsor and our title sponsor in FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. For my pick, I am going to go with the Saturday thriller in Columbia. You've got Texas A&M. You've got the Missouri Tigers. Missouri going without Bo Prabula in this one. They'll have Matt Zoller starting in this game. So I will take the under for point total, and I'll probably go with the over on rushing yards for Ahmad Hardy. Got to rely on him in a game like this. A&M's been so impressive, but I can see this Missouri defense coming to play. So those will be my picks over on FanDuel. The final set of questions for the week will begin with Bryce. Bader, Grisham, or Mullins. I've seen all 3 linked toward Kansas City. I feel like Bader was built to play in a Royals outfield, but you can make that argument for all of them, really. The one that would be the most exciting would be Trent Grisham because he's a 30 home run guy. He's got a little bit of that flair, that swagger, and I think he'd look really good in a Royals uniform, and he's the biggest fish of the bunch there. Then I would say Harrison Bader because I believe he's the best fit, or the best fit for Kansas City in that outfield. And then I'd say Cedric Mullins is number 3 on that list. I like Mullins a lot. I bet he'll bounce back wherever he goes. It's too risky for the Royals, though, because if he doesn't bounce back and you give him a little bit more of an expensive deal, you could be running into some issues there. But all 3 of them could make sense. Mullins and Bader make a lot of sense based on what the Royals have to spend. Grisham, not so much. But I know I'd be pretty excited talking on the podcast about Trent Grisham if they were to get him in free agency. This one's from the Mizzler. How would you grade a hypothetical offseason of trading/releasing Daniel Lynch, signing Caleb Ferguson, re-signing Adam Frazier, trade one of our righty bullpen arms for Blake Perkins, trade Bubich for Taylor Ward, extend Michael, and buy out Vinny's arbitration years? To go down the list here, I would say, trading or releasing Daniel Lynch, it's kind of a push. You do have guys that could replace him. I'm not sure it moves the needle as much. Signing Caleb Ferguson, I feel that'd be pretty good. So if that was the alternative, I'd grade out those moves pretty well. When it comes to re-signing Frazier, yeah, I feel it's a fine guy to bring back. It can't be your only move, of course. But to have that option at second base based on what you did last year at second base can't really hurt this offense. Then you have trading one of our righty bullpen arms for Blake Perkins, a.k.a. the former Royal as well. Blake Perkins would be a great fit for this outfield, and I thought at one time he was going to be, but just never really happened and just panned out with Milwaukee. Hence why I'm also glad that a Brewers hitting coach is coming over to Kansas City to find the most out of some of those guys you may not be paying as close attention to. The Bubic for Taylor Ward, I'd say that would be the move that would not make me feel good whatsoever. Bubic is somebody that I believe can be a top arm in this rotation. And Taylor Ward, as much as I like him, I don't want to trade Bubic for a 31-year-old rental bat, basically, because he's only got 1 year left before he's a free agent. So I would give up prospects and probably lesser prospects than anybody in your top five for Taylor Ward if you could get it done. I'd rather go Joe Adell because you got the extra years of control, but I wouldn't go Bubic for Taylor Ward. Extending Michael, all for it, and buying out Vinny's arbitration years, I'd like that as well. So for those moves, man, I liked a lot of them except for Bubic to Taylor Ward. So if I combined them all, I'd give it a B-. I would say if you traded somebody else for Taylor Ward, I'd probably get you up to a B+ or an A- on the moves you'd be making in that hypothetical offseason. This one's from Blaze. Would a Bubic extension make sense for the Royals? Feel like his trade value won't be too high because of injuries and team control, and him coming off injury could lower the cost. Yeah, I believe it would be playing to the Royals' favor here. Now, is he going to sign for pennies? Probably not. No, he's still going to be wanting a good chunk of money. It's not going to be as expensive, but I get this growing sense that the Royals really believe in Kris Bubic, and they want him to be a main part of this rotation for years to come. It's all about staying healthy, and guys that don't stay healthy usually don't get those contracts. Or if you're Kris Bubic, you do sign a cheaper 2-year deal or something like that. I could absolutely see a scenario in which they give him a 2-year deal just so he doesn't hit free agency next season. And then you give him a pretty good pay bump. But then you know that when that deal's up, if he stayed healthy, he's going to be in a very expensive pitcher. And that's probably when you'd have to walk away or then trade him down the road. But I could see a world in which they do give him an extension. And he's somebody that we haven't really talked about and being an extension guy because he's dealt with so many injuries in his career. This one's from Caleb. If we do get our middle of the order bat through trade, what do you think of our chances we still add someone at the level of Trent Grisham or Cedric Mullins as the second piece? Much more likely it would be Cedric Mullins over Trent Grisham. Grisham's going to be more of an expensive center fielder. He's going to try to play into that Cody Bellinger market where he's not making Cody Bellinger money, nowhere close to it, but he can be that option where if teams don't want to pay for Cody Bellinger, they'll still give Trent Grisham a lot of money. Cedric Mullins will probably get a 1-year deal anywhere from $6 to $10 million. That's my guess. So I could see a world in which that happens. And he does have a higher upside offensively than Kyle Isbell. Defensively, he's not going to be nearly as good as Isbell out there. But I'd be for it. I mean, if you got a big fish, and I keep saying big fish over and over again in this offseason, but I do believe that, you get that one that you've been looking for to play left field, and you went out and got Cedric Mullins to be your center fielder on a bounce-back deal, I'd be for it. But also, as I've said before, I don't want too many bounce-back guys in this lineup. But if they felt very confident with a full spring training, Cedric Mullins can return to form. That could be a really good-looking outfield for the Royals rolling into 2026. Tom's question, I'm leaning more into trading Bubic for a bat. Do you think they'll have him at the top of their list of arms to move? Certainly to be talked about. I've said it's either Kris Bubic or Noah Cameron as the likely ones to be dealt. There's also a world in which they don't deal either of them, and they'd rather trade from their farm system. Because I've heard J.J. Picollo say in the past well, we don't want to trade big leaguers for big leaguers because you want to add and not subtract. And that's kind of just pushing, if you will. That's just staying in the middle. Yeah, you did get better offensively, but you lost a really good pitcher. Whereas you want to keep adding and adding and adding. And that's why if you could strike a deal for that middle of the order bat, I would hope you're not having to pull from your rotation, because I believe Noah Cameron and Kris Bubic can be high-level pitchers for this team in 2026. But if you do move them, hoping you're bringing in a high-level bat that can really make a difference in the lineup. This one's from David. Ha-Sung Kim is a free agent again. Would he be a good fit if willing to move to second? which gives defensive flexibility against right-handers, and he turned down the option of $16 million. Would we be able to get for less than 2 years or more? Would we be able to sign him for less than 2 years or more? To do this, we need to swing big for Duran or maybe even Wilyer Abreu. Doesn't fully address the right-handed bat. I would say that he'd be a good fit. He can play around a little bit. Wasn't as healthy last year, of course. It's why he was cheap in free agency. But hey, if you are to go out there and get him, a 2-year deal, I believe, would make a lot of sense. I believe that's what he's going to be looking for, more security. He's also not going to be able to leverage a $15 to $20 million deal. It's going to have to be cheaper because he was a below league average bat when he played, and the upside just wasn't there. So going into free agency, he's going to want more security, but he can't shoot for the moon in terms of the price range there. So I'd look into it for sure. I don't know if they're going to be heavily in the market for free agent second baseman. That's why I said it. Adam Frazier's going to come back. To me, he feels like the likeliest option, and that would then rule out Ha-Seong Kim. David also asked, Greedy adding a second baseman based on Spotrac, Bichette at 7 for 175 or Bregman 4 for 120 if they're willing to move to second base. Which would you rather? Torn at those numbers and think it would cost a lot of money. Yeah, both those would be expensive. Here's the deal with those two guys. I mean, I would take Bregman in a heartbeat. Bregman and Bichette are going to sign somewhere where they're going to be able to stay at their position. Bregman's going to be a third baseman. And to me, he's going to go back to Boston. The Red Sox traded Rafael Devers, so they probably could afford Alex Bregman. I said Bo Bichette is going to return to Toronto and play shortstop. Both those guys are going to get paid, and both those guys are going to be able to have those positions. So that just kind of takes out the Royals. I don't believe they'd offer them that type of money and tell them to move to second base, and those guys would be accepting that deal. Lastly, Eli's question, where do you think JJ ranks in top 30 of GMs? He doesn't lose many trades, and it's getting to be a fleece every time he trades with another team. His worst trade is maybe Singer for India and Weimer. I would say that, if you were to poll a lot of GMs in baseball, he's absolutely on the front half of that. I'd say he's top 15. What is going to have to separate him, though, is when he approaches that first offseason or deadline where the Royals have to put the chips in a little bit. Right now, it's about keeping them competitive, getting them into the postseason every single year, which he's done a really good job on. But I believe you really can get a good measure of a GM when they got that pressure turned up and when they got that heat on them and they got to do something at the deadline or in the offseason. And I believe that'll be next year for the Royals if they are to make the postseason this year. So I'll say top 15 for now. That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second, find the all-night Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, when the World Series champion is crowned, which, of course, already happened last weekend. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I will be out of town, so even if there's breaking news over the weekend, I won't be able to do a full episode until Monday, but I will try to get a short out if anything crazy happens. Might even do a Twitter Spaces, but fingers crossed nothing does, and I can wait till news maybe breaks on Monday of next week. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.